Hi. So, what is data? Well, data is a unit of information. Great. So what is information? Information is a unit of knowledge. Wow. Okay, so what is knowledge? Well, knowledge is a unit of wisdom. Okay, so there's a lot there. We'll have some other videos where we'll talk about knowledge systems and wisdom systems. Today we'll talk about data and how it can make up an information system. So what is data? When you wake up in the morning, you're loading a broad array of data right away. You load what room you are in relevant to your shelter. You're loading in habits, what you think about eating right away, or if you need a coffee. You're loading that what season it is, or what priorities you have. So this is loaded instantaneously, unconsciously. And at every moment throughout the day, you're continually loading data. You're able to navigate this and it becomes a continuous experience. Now, you might say, well, I'm not really loading data. I kind of got this figured out, so I don't see what you're saying here. Fine. But when you were 2 and you loaded data, it was a different type of relevance to you. When you were 2, or let's say you're 4, as soon as you woke up, you wanted to watch cartoons. As soon as you woke up, you wanted to play with toys. You're more interested in consuming data. You're going out and trying to consume data, and that was your narrative. The consumption of the data was your narrative. You would watch a cartoon, and your imagination would become part of that narrative. So as you grow older, you develop better wisdom systems, better knowledge systems, and you integrate that with the data that you load at each moment. So why do I bring this up? How is this relevant? Data is relevant to you. It's unconscious and conscious. And the reason why I say this is so that you have some confidence to realize that whatever we've developed in IT, whatever we've developed with technology, you'll realize you already know this. You just need the exposure. So this video is meant to expose some of the underpinnings of how data contributes to an information system. And then once you realize this, you will feel you've always known it. So let's talk about an information system. How does it work? How do we make it up? So the traditional methodology is that we have it split up in different layers. So why do we split it up in different layers? Well, there was a time where I actually built a database with Perl. But then I had access to this technology called MySQL. It was wonderful. It did everything for me. All I needed to do was interface with that system. And it had its own capabilities that were pre-built that I just needed to take advantage of. It was great. I no longer needed to have this, I had to maintain this database that I wrote in Perl. So it was wonderful. So the reason why these layers build up over time in the technology industry and IT is to allow people to take advantage of these capabilities without needing to worry about it. And so the data, reason why we talk about data with respect to these systems is these systems exist only because of the data. You can't write code without data. Code is meaningless without data. Mind you, developers can write code without data. But every time they deploy that code will fail because it wasn't tested or validated with the data. So you need the data, or the code isn't relevant. You need the data, or the system isn't relevant. Okay, so the data is needed for an information system. So how do we make up this information system? Think of it like a pizza. On a pizza, you have layers. It's just how you construct a pizza. It might be unconscious, but as I talk about it, you realize, yeah, that makes sense. I already knew that that's how you make a pizza. You make a pizza in layers. You have your dough layer, you have your sauce layer, you have your cheese layer, and your toppings layer. Let's say that's the approach. Let's relate this to an IT system. The traditional methodology. So let's say the dough layer is your persistence layer. Your layer where you have your sauce. That sauce layer is your backend system layer. And then your cheese layer is your middle layer or your middleware layer. And then your toppings layer on your pizza can be related to IT being your front end. So you have your front end, then you have your middle end or middleware or middle layer, then you have your back layer or back end, and then you have your persistence layer. So data flows into the system and out of the system. Let's talk about that. Let's trace through it. To flow data into the system, the data flows from the toppings layer. So in that layer, the responsibilities for the toppings layer or the front end layer is to capture the data, either from a person or from another system. That data is then passed to a middle layer or the cheese layer. And on that layer is to transform the data and to combine the data and format the data to prepare it to be persisted. Then the backend layer or the sauce layer, that layer will take that data that's ready to be persisted and find the appropriate persistence, whether it's in a file system or in a database, and also whether to create it or update that data. Then the backend system passes that data to the persistence layer, and that layer is responsible for persisting the data. Now we want to flow that data back up. What does that mean to flow data back up? Well, let's say we want to render that data to make it relevant, to make it information. Well, we take that data from the bottom layer or the dough layer. Now it's crust. If it's cooked, it's crust layer. So we take the data from the repository. The backend system is figuring out how best to pull that data. The backend system pulls the data from the repository layer or the crust layer, and that's the sauce layer of the pizza. It passes that information to the middle layer or to the cheese layer, and that layer, the data is then transformed or prepared to be rendered, and then quite easily that data flows up to the toppings layer, which is rendered to create an experience. So as you eat the pizza, you have certain preferences on the toppings layer. That's probably where you enjoy the most variation of your experience. So the front end layer has a lot of opportunity to be quite different. And so we need to structure that in a way where that layer has a little bit more flexibility than the other layers. Like the persistence layer is very inflexible. And so then you have, what you notice is that model is you have it layered out such that you have different skills and different non-functional concerns where each of those layers have dependencies on their own infrastructures and their own skill base to be able to make up this information system. So the reason why we bring up the what is data, we can't talk about what is data unless we also intertwine that with how we flow the data to make it into information. Now, let's relate this to synapsechain. Synapsechain really looks at data and looks at experience and tries to find that synergy with experience to the data without breaking it up by skill or by breaking it up into layers. So there's, different responsibilities for backend persistence and with, some other non-functional infrastructures. All those costs and maintenance, etc., can become quite complex. So synapsechain will take that data and intertwine it with the experience directly. How does this contribute towards a knowledge system, or how does it contribute towards a wisdom system? Well, we don't have a knowledge system yet. We don't have a wisdom system yet. All we have are information systems. We are attempting to prepare ourselves for the next phase or that next trend where we have an information system contributing towards a knowledge system and a wisdom system. But at some point when the trend emerges, we're going to have to focus our attention on defining what a knowledge system is and what a wisdom system is. We'll go through that in other videos, but today's video we just wanted to lightly touch on what data is and how it contributes to an information system. So please visit synapsechain.com and explore that experience on how we've done something a little different. Please stay tuned. We'll have some other videos coming out. We'll talk about AI. We'll break down some potential approaches to AI and how that could help us prepare ourselves for upcoming trends. Also, we'll have some other videos on potential use cases and ways to build knowledge systems and wisdom systems. Also, we'll have some other videos just basically on breaking down these traditional systems we have in place today to define how data flows appropriately and in the most efficient way possible. Hope you enjoyed this video. Have a great day.